Hey everybody, and welcome back to another video. So we have a quick video today on KX826 and GT20029 from Kintor Pharmaceutical Limited. Today we will be switching our attention to the Chinese website for a company press report. So let's start with KX826 Pyrilutamide. On the Chinese website, we see that Kintor is actually going through all of the updates regarding Pyrilutamide. The report mentions the Phase 3 Part 1b clinical trial that is looking at KX826 Pyrilutamide against minoxidil in what I assume will be a head-to-head clinical trial. So I mentioned this in my other video, my previous video regarding minoxidil and Pyrilutamide, right? They're trying to come up with a new clinical trial that is solely focusing on looking at a traditional drug like minoxidil that we know has some sort of efficacy against Pyrilutamide. Now, I'm not sure if they're going to actually test the subjects to see if they do respond to minoxidil, because remember, in order to have an adequate response to topical minoxidil, you have to have the sulfur-transferase enzyme, the SALT1A1 human enzyme. So if you have a bunch of candidates who don't have that specific enzyme, it could make Pyrilutamide look more efficacious than it actually is. But that's another thing for another video to talk about. One aspect of this report that I thought was a bit weird was the insistency of Pyrilutamide being efficacious based on the results of the Phase 3 clinical trial in China that actually failed to show any sort of statistical superiority or efficacy, superiority, significance, whatever, against the control placebo group. So here, Kintor becomes a bit short-sighted. Like, they do mention that, okay, yeah, we didn't see any superiority against placebo, but they primarily focus on the fact that within the treatment group, they saw an increase of hair count. In fact, they mention in this report that 22.7 hairs per centimeter squared was noticed, right? But this doesn't make any sense. This isn't a fair assessment because, well, you could say the same thing about the placebo group, which received nothing, right? They essentially received what was the equivalent of alcohol being put on the scalp. It didn't have any growth factor to it. Nothing obvious that was a growth factor in the placebo group. So you could say, okay, the placebo group received nothing and they had an increase of hair count, right? So, like, you can't say that Pyrilutamide is effective because you noticed in that particular arm of the clinical trial that they had an increase of hair count, right? In these double-blind randomized placebo-controlled clinical studies, the best outcome, the true outcome of proving something being effective is when it outcompetes the placebo control group or whatever control group you're using. That's why I'm hoping for the Phase 3 1b, the new second part of the Phase 3 clinical trial that's looking at minoxidil versus Pyrilutamide, KX826. That's why I'm hoping they also have a placebo control group, again, that isn't getting any sort of growth stimulant or topical anti-androgen. I hope we have actually 3 arms or maybe 4 arms here in the clinical trial in that new Phase 3 study from China. So what I'm trying to say is I hope we get a Pyrilutamide group, right? A minoxidil group, a group that also gets minoxidil and Pyrilutamide, and finally a group that is getting the placebo. That's what I'm hopeful for, right? But I don't know if they're even going that way. And I'm going to be charitable here because, yes, they do note once again that there was no negative health outcomes, that Pyrilutamide was generally safe, but that's only at the 0.5% concentration. And I've reiterated this before many times in the past, that perhaps to get that true point of efficacy, Kintor needs to experiment with raising the concentration. Because although we, in the Phase 1 safety trial for Pyrilutamide from China, we found that there were metabolites detected in the serum of the subjects who were using Pyrilutamide at various concentrations. That wasn't an indication that people were having sexual side effects, right? Maybe you need a specific load of metabolites, or maybe those metabolites aren't even that active in vivo for it to elicit sexual side effects. So this is why Kintor needs to, in my opinion, experiment with higher concentrations, maybe at 2%, perhaps 5%, just to see if that actually elicits any sort of positive growth on balding scalps, and maybe still maintaining that safety profile that it had at 0.5% concentration. So who knows? So moving to GT20029, finally, in terms of acne treatment, Kintor is moving to a phase 1 clinical trial in the United States and China. Again, this is for the treatment of acne using GT20029. And just a quick blurb for those of you who don't know, hormonal acne can be caused by DHT. So that's why topical anti-androgens are often experimented with skin conditions and hair loss conditions, those skin conditions being hormonal acne, acne vulgaris, just general acne, right? And also the hair loss condition being seborrheic dermatitis and androgenetic alopecia. Because these conditions have a basis in androgen sensitivity that causes the scalp to either inflame or to destroy or essentially reduce the capacity of the hair follicle to grow hair. So when it comes to GT20029 for treating androgenetic alopecia, if we look at Kintor's pipeline on their website, we can see that GT229 phase 2 Chinese clinical trial for androgenetic alopecia is pretty much over. So I'm assuming the results or a press report should be coming out sometime soon. So overall, the press release from Kintor Pharmaceutical Limited regarding KX826 and GT20029 leaves room for inquiry into the comprehensive results and assessment of these clinical trials. So we need to get these results of the clinical trial, even the failed one, right, for the phase 3 clinical trial for KX826 Pyrilutamide for the treatment of androgenetic alopecia, the one that occurred in China. We need to see that document that actually shows how this clinical trial was done. I'm tired of looking at press reports. Give me a paper to look at and read to actually get further detail into what happened, right? Because the absence of detailed data on the critical aspects of the research, such as the statistical significance of KX826 efficacy over placebo, and the complete outcomes of GT229's phase 1 acne trials, suggests a strategic choice in reporting that mostly focuses on positive advancements while potentially overlooking or really maybe purposely underemphasizing the less favorable results. So there's a bit of a song and dance kind of going on, a little bit of a game. It doesn't really make Kintor look that transparent, but all that being said, it's a positive sign to see that they're pushing forward with actually scrutinizing and researching KX826 efficacy, and also we could be getting good news for the phase 2 results of GT20029 for the treatment of androgenetic alopecia. So that being said, I think this is somewhat of a positive report. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching and hope to see you on the next one. Peace out.